而布林肯呢，在北京的时候也接受了访问。在我们看他接受访问之前，我们先来看整个时间表。在美国这一次对中国政策最关键性的是3月3号左右，当时就有情报委员会的总监，还有美国的中情局长完全改口，他们不认为中国短时间里头会统一台湾，会有武力攻打台湾。接着就是4月20号，由 Janet Yellen 定调美中关系不脱钩。接着就是5月12号。美国的国家安全顾问 Sullivan 在维也纳见了王毅，那么最后呢，双方达成了和平相关的一个议程。布林肯访问了北京，而且在6月17号的时候抵达北京，18号时候见了习近平。而布林肯在北京接受专访的时候，他谈到这次最重要的意义，第一个就是避免战争，而这个战争最重要就是台海战争。台海战争的意义是什么？它是全球性经贸的影响。除了大家早就熟悉的 TSMC 台积电的半导体之外，他特别听到台湾海峡的整个旁边所代表的航道巴士海峡有50%在太平洋这个地方，亚洲这个区域的所有的全世界的航运有50%要通过这条航道，所以这里不可以有战争。
在美中近乎可能爆发第3次世界大战的轨道中，美国国务卿布林肯此次访华意义重大，至少他关键性地降低更多风险，试图稳定一个即将翻车的美中关系。布林肯离开北京前与中国国家主席习近平会面，代表非常重要的意义。会面结束后，他明确表示，这次访问对美国、对世界经济和平的重要性。
After that meeting, Secretary Blinken sat down with us and was clear this visit had to happen.
We were in an increasingly unstable place in our relationship. I think this is the start of a process to put a little more stability into it.
With friction on nearly every front, including tariffs, espionage, and Taiwan, U.S.-China relations have been in near free fall. Add to it now growing tension over a Chinese spy base on Cuba.
I repeatedly raised it. And of course, this is not something new.
Is the administration at all concerned about China making it more than a spy base?
We always have concerns when they are physically taking a position that could turn into a military base of some kind.
结束官方访问后，布林肯在北京接受了美国国家广播公司 NBC 以及哥伦比亚广播公司 CBS 的专访。
So, with Beijing, the balloon incident is over. Water under the bridge?
We did what we needed to do to protect our interests. We said what we needed to say and made clear what we needed to make clear in terms of this not happening again. And so, as long as it doesn't, that chapter should be closed. But it's something we're very vigilant about, and that we'll continue to watch, just as others who were affected, I'm sure, will want to make sure this doesn't happen again. But it would be totally irresponsible not to engage with China. If we're not engaging, it makes it that much more difficult to make sure that the competition we're in doesn't veer into conflict. If we're not engaging, how do we make clear where not only where our differences are, but where our intent is, and what we are doing and not doing? If we're not engaging, much harder to do what I did, which was to stand up strongly for human rights, including individual cases of including Americans who are being detained. How are we going to work to get them home?
台湾问题当然成为布林肯访中的核心议题。
In your discussions of Taiwan, did you get a better read on whether U.S. expansion of military bases in Guam and the Philippines was having an unintended knock-on effect here in Beijing and fueling this sense of urgency to make a move on Taiwan?
Again, I don't want to speak for China on any of this, except to say that their positions on Taiwan are very well known, and they spent a fair bit of time going through their perspective, their concerns. I did the same. And one thing that we've tried to make clear is that at the very heart of the relationship between China and the United States when diplomatic relations were established is our understanding that differences with regard to Taiwan will be resolved peacefully. And that has been something that actually has been the case for the better part of 5 decades. And we've managed to deal with this in a responsible fashion. And we continue to adhere to the policies that administration after administration have held to, the One China policy. Our conviction that differences need to be resolved peacefully, that the status quo should not be changed by either side, especially by using force, and we don't support independence for Taiwan. But equally, I made very clear the deep concern that we have with actions that China has been taking, going back to 2016, that are dangerous, provocative, and could lead to a real problem. There's a reason that many countries around the world, not just the United States, is concerned about this. 50% of daily trade in the world, container traffic that's carrying goods to countries around the world, goes through the Taiwan Strait. 50%. Semiconductors that are made on Taiwan, about 70% of semiconductors are manufactured there. If there were to be a crisis over Taiwan and that traffic was disrupted, the semiconductors were disrupted, it could potentially create a global economic crisis. So every country has an interest in responsible actions, in making sure that differences are resolved peacefully, not by force, or for that matter, by coercion or pressure. So we had a very lengthy conversation about this. On the one hand, I tried to make clear that our policy has not changed. The One China policy, as well as our commitments to Taiwan under the Taiwan Relations Act. And at the same time, it was imperative that they not take any actions that could lead to the resolution of the differences by force or by coercion.
而在重启美中军事对话方面，中方为什么拒绝？
Your message has consistently been that you are here to open up lines of communication to avoid a military clash. But you just said China did not agree to open that military to military line of talks. Did Xi Jinping just say no?
It's a work in progress. This is something that we need to do in the interests of both of our countries. That is, not only to establish and reestablish and strengthen lines of communication across our government, which we have done, starting with this trip, and I believe visits to follow by a number of my colleagues and then Chinese officials coming to the United States. Hugely important if we're going to responsibly manage the relationship, if we're going to communicate clearly and try to avoid the competition that we have veering into conflict. But an aspect of that that really is important is military to military. We don't have an agreement on that yet. It's something we're going to keep working. I made very clear to our Chinese counterparts the importance that we attach to that, something that is also profoundly in their interest, because again, we both agree that we want to, at the very least, make sure that we don't inadvertently have a conflict because of miscommunication, because of misunderstanding.
So Xi Jinping didn't say absolutely not. It was just not a commitment.
This is a work in progress. We're working on it.
Will the defense chiefs at least talk to each other?
Well, again, to be seen. We've made clear that we think that's important, more than important, imperative. I think the Chinese understand very well, because I made very clear where we're coming from on this, and we'll keep working it.
During the Cold War, the U.S. and the Soviet Union had that hotline. Is that the kind of thing you're imagining? How would this kind of communication work?
It's less a hotline and more regular engagement, regular communication, so that they understand what we're doing and not doing. We understand what they're doing and not doing. We have greater clarity on each other's intent in different places, and in particular, when we have incidents like the incidents that we just had a couple of weeks ago with them driving their boats much too close to ours, or their planes flying in very dangerous ways near ours, that we have a channel established that we can go to deal with the problem.
But that architecture just doesn't exist right now.
Well, we of course have many ways to communicate with the Chinese government. It's exactly what we're doing, and we're seeing that now pick up in part as a result of this trip. It's fundamentally in our interest to do that. But one aspect that remains is the military to military, and we'll keep pressing it.
而美方盘点布林肯的访华成果，指他已达成了行前拟定的3大目标，包括双方对强化美中学生、学者与企业交流持欢迎态度，致力增加两国直航班机数量，也同意接下来让资深官员在华府北京交流，维持开放沟通管道。更重要的是，要促成美中2位领导人今年底在美国主办的 APEC 会议上再次见面，必要时举行场外高峰会。
We will see further communication between them. That too really is important in making sure that we're responsibly managing the relationship.
A phone call?
To be seen.